Hello and welcome to Global Sanctuary for Elephants podcast, Global Rumblings. Global Sanctuary for Elephants, or GSE for short, is a non-profit organisation with a mission to create vast safe spaces for captive elephants where they are able to heal physically and emotionally, often from very traumatic pasts. I'm your host, Nadia Maserati, and I'll be taking you to the lush jungle of the Mato Grosso region in central Brazil, home of GEC's initial project, Elephant Sanctuary Brazil, where former zoo and circus elephants from across South America live their best lives. Hello everybody, welcome back to Global Rumblings. Thanks for joining us again this week as we continue to learn more about Baby, the Sanctuary's latest resident. We have talked about Baby's life prior to Sanctuary, her life at the zoo, her life at the circus, and in our last episode we talked about her relocation from the Beto Carreiro amusement world in Brazil. And today we're going to learn more about her first weeks and months, well, nearly over a month at the Sanctuary. So let's say hi to Kat and Scott and start the podcast. Hi, you two.
Hey, Nadia.
Hey, Nadia, how are you? Sorry, we just lost into for a minute and we thought we'd lost you and then we had the introduction already. So, hey.
Hi, you too. Yeah, the connection's a bit wonky today, you said, but we're used to that. So before we talk more about Baby and her first weeks at the Sanctuary, I'd like to catch up on two topics. One was that we talked about Gatorade in our last podcast, and some of your supporters were a little bit concerned that Baby was getting excessive amounts of sugar. So I checked two AIs of my choice, and 4 bottles of Gatorade have got 140 grams of sugar, or an average 2-meter piece of sugar cane has got roughly 300 to 400 grams of sugar. So that's 140 grams Gatorade versus 300 to 400 grams. So that is quite a difference. Of course, it depends. Sugar cane has to be chewed, juice is lost. But yes, that does support what you said, that Gatorade isn't the culprit. It hasn't got that much sugar.
I'm going to add one more thing to that. And I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but remember with Bambi, the majority of her diet was sugarcane. And I'm not justifying the diet.
Yeah.
I know, but
her diet was terrible.
To put in perspective, she was getting 30 or 40 kilos of sugarcane a day. Not good for them at all. It actually was a primary diet.
She was very overweight at her first zoo if she was getting that.
And it's a primary diet for many elephants in zoos in South America, in Brazil anyway. And I think it was the Brasilia Zoo did a research project and determined that most of the diets in the Brazilian zoos were completely imbalanced. And they said at the very least to put the sugar cane through an extractor, which removes, I think, 60% of the juice before you give it to them. So they still get the fiber, they still get some nutrients, but it doesn't have the same sugar content. At the very minimum, if you didn't have other food sources, put it through an extractor first. But many elephants in South America were receiving excessive amounts of sugarcane. So if we're talking about a few bottles of Gatorade, and nada, it's really nothing in the big scheme of things. And if it helps stimulate her, then it's all good.
And they use sugarcane in the diets because it's cheap. Elephants eat a lot of food. And there are definitely facilities that don't really have the budget for them. So they just feed them what they can. So they'll do sugarcane. And also, I know people are going to be like, but Gatorade has artificial colors and Yes, all of that is true. And sugarcane does not. But again, this isn't a regular thing we give our elephants by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. It's a road trip food. Like I drink Coke. Yeah. When I'm on the road a long time, so does Scott, but that's not part of our daily diet. So yes, I hope that has put some listeners at ease. And the other thing we talked about in the last 2 episodes is that we talked about Baby gate crashing. Bless her, your Trunks and Treasures online auction. And the figures are out, and the Sanctuary has its new medical building. So maybe you can just briefly take us through the figures, Kat, of the amounts raised.
Sure. First, we do not have our medical building. It has to be purchased and built. And
okay, it's funded.
It takes a while.
Sorry, it's funded.
Yes, it is funded. One of the biggest issues in Brazil is supply. The first thing we have to do is get 2 large 40-foot metal containers, and often they don't have those in stock. So it can take up to 6 months just to get the containers themselves. And then you have the same process with the roof panels. It's not the US. You can't just run out to Lowe's and get some cute roof panels. So it will definitely take a while. It could easily take a year to have that building built. It is fully funded, thankfully. What happened, as we mentioned, was that the auction, usually the busiest part where we raise the most money, is the last hour, where everybody really bids. And that was when baby arrived. So we did not meet our goal initially. We were about halfway to the goal of $150,000. And Christine, our development director, was talking to one of our long-term supporters, Sue Levin, and she decided to fund what hadn't been raised. So she gave a very large, generous gift of $80,000 to bring the total just over $150,000, which was the goal to raise. She's been with us for a very long time. Possibly, she's been since, I don't know, she was since Tennessee. But she's definitely been around since close to the beginning of the sanctuary. She actually, last auction and this auction as well, she makes the cute little elephant figurines. And she makes elephant wine bottle stoppers, which we actually bid on at the last auction and won because they're super cute. So she's donated before, she's supported with her artwork, but she decided that it was definitely worth the investment to be able to support being able to finance the rest of the medical building. So thanks to everybody who took part in the auction, and to Sue, we did reach the goal for the building.
It was very exciting. And, Kat introduced it. It's like, how soon can we build a medical building? Which immediately put me into panic. And then I said, but we didn't make the goal. She said,
how to cause anxiety for my husband.
We didn't meet the goal. And she said, yeah, we did. Sue just donated $8,000, which creates both super excitement and super anxiety. Excitement outweighs the anxiety, and gratitude outweighs both. So super excited and super grateful for everybody involved, and especially for Sue for that stepping in on that level. Pretty remarkable.
And having faith in our work. With big gifts, I would assume, I don't have that kind of money, but I would assume you really have to trust in the mission and the work of who you are giving your money to. There are lots of organizations out there, lots of places that do good work. So, it always feels nice to know that your supporter trusts what you are doing to that extent.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. So thank you to Sue for, in effect, matching what everybody else has raised. So thank you to everybody who also joined the auction and bid successfully. I'll keep an eye out on those little figurines and the wine stoppers, or maybe I'll use it as a beer stopper. I'm more of a beer person for our next auction. So yes, let's head on then to Baby. Tell us, how has she been? Of course, we can watch the videos and we can read your wonderful blog posts. And I will actually link up to the blog post regarding the trunks and treasures if anybody is interested in reading what exactly building the medical building will entice and what all the equipment will be. But yes, take us on another journey, not on the road, but through the sanctuary. How is Baby?
Baby's doing very, very well. And to, I guess, summarize those first few weeks, I cannot tell you how many times caregivers came back and just simply said, she's amazing, she's amazing, she's amazing. Mm-hmm. And every new elephant has their own response. Kenya was another one that a lot of people responded to. And around the world, people fell in love with Kenya right away. But a different type of amazing. But I think people were a little bit more speechless with Kenya in their awe of her. But with Baby, everyone came back with a huge smile on their face and just saying she's just remarkable. She's very precious, she's very cute, she's very charming, she's very personable. She She continued for a while with her insecurities, coming back to the barn on a regular basis and checking in with caregivers, and still continuing with stereotyping a fair bit when she was, when caregivers are around, to a little bit of anticipation of interaction, which was a positive thing for her. But now all of that anticipatory stereotyping has diminished substantially. She is exploring more. Every day she's turning more and more white with one of the clays that is in her mud wallow / pond.
And more red with the dirt pile that is right next to it after she gets out. So she's a little splotchy at times.
But she's just doing exceedingly well. Couldn't be happy with how well she's settling in and exploring.
I think one of I'm going to say nice things, and people may not see it that way, but I think one of the nice things for the caregivers was to start working with an elephant who wasn't necessarily super open to them, that wasn't, this bubbly, life is wonderful, I want to be your best friend elephant, but to actually have to work for that relationship a little bit. I am one of those people who thinks nothing good in life comes easily, which isn't awesome sometimes, but I think there is something about having to function more on their terms from the beginning. A lot of the girls, a lot of the Asian elephants that everybody works with everybody that's there, they were already trained. They had already gone through a lot of emotional healing. They were already very settled with trusting the people around them, and all that goes with the healing that happens at sanctuary. With baby, there's a lot that has to go on with her. She does like people, but she doesn't just open up to anybody right away. She does have insecurities. She does appreciate human assistance with her insecurities. So I think it's a different type of relationship building that all of the caregivers are going through with her. And I think it's really good on both sides for everyone. I'm only laughing because Scott just nodded, which of course nobody can see.
Take it away, Kat. Keep on going.
So has there been any, obviously there hasn't been any physical contact with the other girls, because baby is still in the male Asian habitat, but I did see a video that showed her at the bottom part of her habitat so that she could see the other girls.
Yeah, that was actually the first direction she really explored, was towards the other girls. She would get almost all the way there, and then she'd go back towards the barn, and then she'd go a little further and back towards the barn. And she made it all the way to the corner where she can see them. And since then, quite regularly, they are there. This week, they were actually quite frequently at that corner. I say they because kind of confused names. Maya, Bambi, and Geisha were all relatively close to that corner, and Baby was also there. So there's a lot of vocalizing at night. There was a lot of parties this week at night, and with that, we're assuming that Baby's participating at night, but don't know for sure.
There was definitely the one night a noise that didn't sound like any of the noises we're used to. We've talked about how we can mostly identify the girls at night from the patterns and listening. And I mean, they're vocal almost every night. So you just get used to hearing who's who. So there was definitely one night where there was a noise that seemed unfamiliar to our ears. But no way to know 100% that it was definitely her versus Gigi trying out a new noise versus whatever. She does it all the time. She's very cute. But
it's great. It's been wonderful to see that evolution. And again, just slow steps, a little slower with her, I think, to open up, as Kat said. But that's also really powerful, to give her that space, to let her know that we're there. Let all the caregivers let them know that they are there for her. And just see what it's going to take to help her open up those walls.
I don't quite remember how long she was alone when the other two female elephants died at the zoo, but would it be correct in saying that she sort of literally has to find her voice? We have talked about this, about communication, sort of try out how she sounds towards the other girls and how to communicate? Is that maybe a reason why we're not hearing her at the moment, or is that just me assuming things again?
I don't know that I would go to that assumption personally, because we don't know what her communication is with other elephants, but she also did communicate with other elephants, contrary to, let's say, Geisha and Pocha. Geisha only knew Pocha for all those years. And she knew her dad too through a wall. But let's go to Bambi. Bambi, her one friend, one living mate, she didn't get along with at all, and she wasn't vocal at all. Hana was alone for 40 or 50 years. Those are all, I think, different scenarios than what Baby had. Baby had somebody that passed away just 4 years prior. What was her vocalization with that other elephant? We don't know.
Okay.
What kind of voice did she have with that? We don't know that. So maybe learning a voice with different individuals, but as far as learning her voice with other elephants, I think she's in a better scenario, if I can use that word, than others, because she did have, non-related companions for many years.
Yeah.
And some of it may be her just trying to figure out the dynamics and who's there. She can hear them, she can smell them. I would assume she knows that we have 5 other elephants, and she probably knows things about them that we don't know about them from the messages that are transmitted, through smell and through sound, but also trying to figure out their dynamics with each other and who they are and how she might fit and who she might be interested in. I would think there's a lot that she's trying to understand and possibly figure out about them from a distance. So even just deciding her comfort level of even possibly who she does want to communicate, because the 3 have been near that fence much more than the other 2.
Okay.
She has now had instances where Mara and Hana have been at the same, right across the road at a fence where she can see them, but that has been much less frequent than the other 3 being in that area by her. So, it's possible that she resonates more with the older girls, but they're not actually there a lot. There's so many possibilities going on with what's going on with her right now and what she's trying to figure out and what she's thinking and what she's feeling. It's just impossible to say.
I'm going to add to that there's a lot to be said for the person that enters the room and listens versus the person that enters the room and just starts talking.
Yeah.
Thank God. That works for me.
Reading the room, as
you
Kat likes to
perceive
say.
so much more. Reading the room and reading who those individuals are, and she doesn't need to come in as a new girl and take over the conversation. So maybe that's part of who she is too. We don't know. We don't know what her previous introductions were. She was quite a bit younger than the other 2. We know that she did the last one that passed away 4 years prior. She was basically her adopted mom. So again,
from what we're told,
from what we've understood. So we don't know those nuances of the relationship or her communication prior.
And do we know, have the caregivers found out her favorite foods yet? Has she any specifics she likes, or does she like everything?
I don't know that she has a favorite at this point. She eats everything pretty well.
Yeah, with her produce, she's pretty much down for. Oh no, she doesn't like pineapple. Pineapple gets stepped on. Pineapple is a no. Other than pineapple, though, I don't think there's anything. She does a weird thing where she doesn't really like if you give any of our girls half a watermelon, they are so happy with half a watermelon. She will leave the really big pieces of watermelon a lot of times and prefers it cut into smaller pieces, which for me, I think is, even Poopy, who had trouble picking them up, still would work her best and hardest to get a big piece of watermelon into her mouth if there was one available. But I don't know. She doesn't seem super into the giant chunks of watermelon.
Hana will sometimes leave hers. If she has other things, she'll leave her to the end, but she always has an eye on it. It's funny when she's done treatment sometimes.
She's saving the best for last.
Yeah, if you let her out with the other, with Mara, for example, after treatment's done, you let them out, she gets a little reward for finishing everything. And sometimes it's some little treats with a watermelon. and she'll leave the watermelon, but she always has an eye on it. And if Mara starts walking over, she will leave the treats and grab the watermelon before Mara comes over to get it. So she knows it's there. She has an eye on it, making sure no one's going to steal it, but she will often leave the best for last.
Oh. And a few weeks have passed, of course, since our last podcast. And you said, Kat, that test results that have been done to figure out babies, what's going on inside baby, obviously take some time to come back to you, and then you need to talk to the judge. And then the decision will be then made to, release her then into the female Asian habitat. But can you maybe give listeners just an idea of how much longer it's going to take? Roughly a month, 2 months?
No.
I would use the common Brazilian phrase, calma, fica calma, fica
Está
tranquilo. Just stay calm. It'll get there. No urgency. She's doing really well. She's adapting. I'll go back to Kat to answer the question more thoroughly. Aside from no.
I like no. I honestly there's just so much to it that, again, the last thing I want to do is be like, oh, it's going to happen in a month. And it doesn't happen because of something on baby's end, something on the lab's end, something on the judge's end. I mean, there's just too many parts and pieces to all of this. So no idea.
Okay.
Her training is going really well. She is becoming much more comfortable with trunk manipulation.
Okay.
She's becoming much more relaxed with all of it. One of the things they didn't do well with her training, they did a lot with her, but they didn't do a lot of staying still for any length of time. It was always, distraction with food, trying to do things expeditiously.
Which is something that was super common with elephant training for a very long time. And there are many facilities that still do it. And, we talk about terminal bridging, which is waiting until the end to give a reward, versus intermittent feeding, which is essentially just giving them food the entire time to keep them busy, which are two very different things. But intermittent feeding is still very common.
Yeah, and it does have a place with training.
Sure.
But even with that, a lot of times when you're doing that type of reinforcement schedule, there's still more. There's more quiet time during that training session where an elephant holds their ear for longer, or holds their foot for longer, or holds whatever position for longer. And she wouldn't do that. Even when they did the blood draw with her, she would pull her ear, away 5 or 6 times. And then finally, when they were able to get blood, she would stay still enough for, a small blood extraction. But there was just nothing permanecer. I can't think of a word in English. There's no permanence to those behavior patterns. So they're trying to hold her trunk for longer, be calmer between different things, stay in position for longer. And all of that is just going to help her feel more relaxed with everything we do moving forward.
Okay. So, yes, our time's running out. I can't believe it. So we need to stay relaxed, everybody, and stay calm and be patient, and just continue to watch baby's journey unfold through the videos and the blog posts until such time, hopefully by Christmas, as a Christmas present, she will then be with the other female Asian elephants. I mean, there's a few months. And but yes, I mean, it's early days yet. We don't, her personality, she still needs to find herself. So it's very exciting just to watch that all unfold. But I must say, I do admit I'm a little bit eager and excited. But yes, it's early days yet. So thanks for the update on baby.
I'm going to add a little something to that, only because a short conversation that we had with Nadia before. Nadia, forgive me if I'm divulging too much, but we had a conversation at the beginning of the podcast that all of us were just a little bit funky in our brains coming into this. On Nadia's case side, it's because of a report they're doing for captive elephants. And, we all get eager for the next step for baby or for another, of when it's going to happen, when the transfer is going to happen. But the reality is there's still, we have so far to go with these elephants around the globe. There's still hundreds of elephants in compromised cases. And while we may be eager for a baby's next step, we have to also celebrate the step that has already happened. And it's a huge step forward. And remember the good that is happening every day for her, because there's so many elephants again around the globe that, as we felt before, you just can't imagine how people can justify them staying in those scenarios. Sandro's case, where the judge said that anybody that spoke on his behalf or on behalf of the zoo, him staying in the zoo, should essentially lose their certification or license, because there's no way you can justify him living in that existence. But those facilities still are supported. Yeah. And, we have a lot to celebrate with Baby. Even before she gets released with the others, there's a lot of really good that happened to get us to this point. And we have to remember that not only were we fighting for, working to get Baby removed, but around the globe, people are fighting to get more elephants to this space, even to that first step of having those first steps of sanctuary.
Yeah, definitely. As you said, yes, I've been working a lot on elephants in Japan. Our report will be coming out at the end of August, and it's very depressing. And yes, I suppose for me personally, I just want a little happy end. Again, the word, but Baby has got her happy end. She is at sanctuary. She has got her autonomy. She has got her choice. And if it takes 3 or 4 months for the tests to come back, hey, every day for her is a fantastic step of freedom of choice, and one that we are all fighting for all elephants, captive elephants in surroundings, zoos and circuses around the world. So yeah, I will go back with that and watch some videos in a minute of Baby and just enjoy. Just be happy for her. Yeah.
It all helps to create a little perspective, and you can see our painted elephant. Painted Baby.
Okay, you two. Well, then take care until our next episode. And we'll hear more about Baby, or maybe we will start again on our series, Rethinking Elephants, and pick up on there until there is then more news then to share on Baby and the other girls. Until next time, then take care, you two. Bye.
Thank you, Nadia, and thanks for all you do outside of GSC to help elephants around the globe.
Bye, Nadia.
Bye. As we wrap up this week's episode, a reminder that you can stay up to date with current events at the Sanctuary by following GSE on their various social media channels. You'll find all the details in the show notes or directly on their website, globalelephants.org. Thank you so much for your support, and until we meet up for our next episode, take care.